What's happening, my friends? Welcome to this episode of Carseats and Coffee. I'm your host, Thomas McMinn. And in this episode, I got a very special guest. He hosts two podcasts, the Top-Rated MMA and the Bearded.biz.com. Welcome to the show, Mr. Erik Allen. What's happening, brother? All right, my friends. Erik, thank you so much for jumping on, brother. It's been a while. We've been jamming back and forth.
Yeah.
You're extremely busy, so the fact that you're taking this time to jump on the podcast, I really appreciate it, man.
Thank you so much, man. It's truly an honor to be on the show, man. I'm excited about this. Absolutely.
Right on. So what I like to do, Erik, is I want the listeners first and foremost to know, who is Erik? Like, what do you do, man? Tell us a little backstory.
Yeah, backstory. So I still work full time, but my passion is really just doing podcasting and talking and networking with people. And so I have two podcasts out right now. The Top-Rated MMA Show, which humbly has been considered the #1 MMA podcast in the Northwest. I'm based out in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, which is awesome. And we've done about 155 episodes. In fact, episode 155 comes out in just a couple of days. And then in January of this year, I launched another show called the Bearded.biz. And with that one, I'm talking with entrepreneurs, world changers, and success-minded people. And I have done about 30 episodes of that. And I've had everyone on my show from Ed Milet to Sean Whalen to a kid in a farm in England that's 14 years old making 30 grand a year on eBay to a guy who's climbed all the 7 highest summits in the world. And it's just been fun, man. I love talking with people about their stories because everything is so intriguing to me about people.
Absolutely. So talk to me about that for a minute. Like, how are you getting these guests and stuff on your show? How are you finding these guys? And
yeah, it's so interesting because I didn't know how to find guests when I first started. Top-Rated MMA, it was in 2017. And the first 100 episodes that I did on my show was in a walk-in closet because I didn't have any space in the house. And I was just reaching out to people that I might know and maybe they could introduce me. But I would say now, probably over the last year and a half, I've booked probably 99% of my guests through Instagram Messenger.
Absolutely, man. So let's talk about, you're building these two, separate brands.
Yep.
You got one dedicated, very fine to like the MMA world, another one with the entrepreneur hustling. And I totally understand the power of the connecting with these individuals, but let's walk through, how do you do that and have a full-time job as well? Like, how are you even balancing that out?
It's so tough, man. And people think that I'm crazy, and I do. I wake up at 4 a.m. 6 days a week. I'm very blessed. I get to work from home for my full-time job. It's what pays the bills. It's not the passion, right? And so what drives me is I get up at 4 a.m., I hop in the shower, come up here to my office, and I start working on editing shows, reaching out to potential guests, editing the website, things like that. And then about 7:30, I roll over to my work computer and then make that happen until about 5 o'clock. And then we do that 6 days a week. Sunday is the one day I don't set my alarm. I'm usually up by 5:30 anyways. But yeah, so I kind of set this thing in my mind that it's more important for me to be a world changer than it is to get sleep. My desire to be a world changer is bigger than my desire to sleep. And so I'm okay with getting up at 4 a.m. as long as I can keep doing what I love, man.
Dude, first and foremost, I love that. The fact that you're saying a world changer, like there's so much more passion behind that, right? Than just trying to build a name for yourself. Like, it's like trying to make it, you're doing a movement here, man. So have you always been then like early riser? Or is this something you're just like, if I want it, I got to get at it?
Yeah. I would say, when in high school, I was a big stoner. I was a big druggie. My story is just crazy background filled with a lot of craziness and jail and all that stuff. And I think in my early 20s, after I met my now wife, I was working at Starbucks and I was an opening shift at 4 a.m. And so that kind of shifted my body and my mindset to waking up really early. And so for about 15 years, I've been waking up since about 3 or 4 a.m. every day.
Man. So look at this transition. Like this stuff fascinates me so much because, like I said, this podcast, it's dedicated to dads, but it's men just sharing their stories, right?
Yeah.
Talking about. So that's not a normal thing. Like most people start going down the path of like negative behavioral patterns, and it's really hard to get out of it, man. Like, what was that pivotal moment for you that you said, I got to change this?
Oh man, I came from that crazy background where I thought was a typical neighbor, typical life. I My parents were married up until I was 11 years old. We went to Sunday school. My dad would take me and my buddy and we'd go dumpster diving behind buildings and we'd go find treasures and things like that. And my parents got divorced when I was 11, and I just kind of went down this path of craziness at that point. You know, watched a lot of physical abuse happen to my mom. Had to fight my mom's boyfriend when I was 13 years old, lots of blood, and then moved in with my dad, who kind of rented this house for us to be there. Only he put $20 in the cup, and that was my lunch money for the week for school. And then he'd go stay at his girlfriend's house. I sometimes didn't see my dad for several months. So basically raising myself since 14 years old and made a lot of mistakes. And ultimately what really made me change my life was I was in the music business. I was working for Universal Records, living this rock star lifestyle, 2 to 3 concerts a week, open tab for 2 years, and was invited to go to a church event by this girl that came into the Starbucks that I worked at. And she said, hey, it's kind of tailored towards college age people. Would you be interested in coming and checking it out? And I was like, yeah, sure, I'll go check it out. And this was a couple months before Easter. So I went and I connected with a lot of people there. And then the night before Easter of 2004, I think, me and this band I was managing went out partying, drinking heavily. And I woke up Easter morning in the basement of my buddy's house, surrounded by 10, 15 people that were all passed out. I woke up early and I felt God just tell me right there in that moment, you're done. And I quit cold turkey drinking drugs, cigarettes, everything right there. And I called that girl up that invited me to that church event and got her voicemail. And I just said, hey, I just want to say happy Easter. Hope you're doing good. Maybe we can talk again soon. And a couple months later, we're dating. And a year later, we're married. And now we've been married for 15 years in 2020, man.
Brother, I love this. I love that, man. Like, and I bet you don't look back at a moment and you're like, I don't miss any of it. Like I'm on a whole different trajectory now, baby.
Yes. Oh gosh. I mean, I got chills just thinking about that. Like the transition, man, that God has put on my plate now to just get away from that. And he's been opening so many doors, even this podcast, man, I'm so blessed to be on. But like, I mean, the trajectory that God's got on for me and my wife, and leaving like a legacy, a true legacy for my kids. So my wife came from a crazy background as well. And raising our kids in this environment of just love and not hate and not abuse and just being present with our kids is something that my wife and I didn't experience. So God's just been opening just awesome experiences for my wife and I and our kids.
See, I'm with you, man. Like the whole notion right there, just raising them with love, compassion and stuff, you know, it's very difficult, especially the time that we're in right now, to do that, because as we all know, there's a lot of negativity floating around out there. Like, what are some of the ways that you try to encourage that or instill that in your kids, that love and compassion?
You know, my wife and I really talk about how appreciative we are about those who serve this country, those who are armed forces, those are in police and firefighters and EMT and nurses even. And so my kids see my wife and I anytime that we see somebody in uniform, or even a veteran who's got a hat on that says veteran from Vietnam or whatever. My wife and I always take a second just to say, hey, thank you so much. And my kids, they see this on a daily basis. They see how appreciative that we are of that. And so my kids, they truly have this heart, this just passion to love on people. And definitely not from my wife and I, that's from God. But we try to be examples of that and say, look, we should just love on everybody. It's not us. We're not to judge anybody, you know, like, let's just go show these guys love. And especially those that are serving and fighting this country. And so even my kids, they'll go, oh my gosh, there's someone in uniform. Let's go say hi, or let's go say thank you. And, you know, and they're 6 and 9. And so really just putting in them that, you know, we're here to just love on people. We're not here to judge people.
Have you always had like a draw towards like the men and women in uniform, or like where'd that stem from?
I didn't actually. As a kid, like my grandpa was a veteran, but when I got into drugs and I was really heavily using drugs in my high school years, I got one call from a recruiter and said a lot of things I probably shouldn't have said. And I think once I got married and I started to acknowledge what I missed out on, and I kick myself every day for not joining that brotherhood. But my wife and I kind of just came to terms and said, hey, I just turned 40 years old and I'm too old to go and join at this point, but I just want to be able to give back as much as I can. So when we started Top Rated MMA in 2012, that was the one thing that made us different from any company out there. and it was on my wife. I said, how can we make ourselves different? And my wife said, let's give back to a company. Let's partner with a company that works with veterans. And so we had reached out to Hire Heroes USA, which was actually started by Brian Stan. He was a UFC fighter and a veteran. And so we partnered with those guys early on. We're actually, we're official partners with those guys back in the early days. Now you have to pay massive amounts of money to be that, but we still donate 25% of all the profits made through TopRatedMMA.com to Hire Heroes USA each month.
Dude, the story is just resonating so much because it's like, I think that's part that people are missing with the power of what we're doing. We're creating communities, but ultimately we're creating opportunities to give. Yeah. And whenever any individual has an opportunity to give, to leverage their network, to use their skill sets for better, it's like, why aren't we stepping up? Like, this is what it's about. You step up and you serve in the way that you can serve. Yeah. And I love the fact that you're taking that passion and serving the individuals, the men and women in uniform that are, you know, in all degrees, they're doing amazing things for our country. So I appreciate that, brother. And I think that so many of my listeners are going to really appreciate that and be drawn in because of that as well. So let's talk about now, just kind of like switching in. Yeah. Let's talk about when you first found out, brother, that you are going to now be a dad. Like, how did that go for you, Eric?
Oh, man. My wife and I said at the very beginning when we got married, we were going to wait 5 years, and we did. So we did our own thing for 5 years. And so we just got to know each other first, you know, and we didn't want to jump in and do that. And so when we found out that my wife was pregnant, man, I was super excited. I was pumped. And I was 30 years old when my daughter was born, and she was just the most beautiful thing for me. And it was the craziest thing ever. You know, my wife, she wanted to go the natural path. So we went to a birthing class at someone's house out in Seattle where we used to live. And I'd never been to a birthing class. I never watched a birth online or anything like that before. And so we're sitting in there in the very first class. There's about 4 of the couples, and this lady's going to show us this video of people giving birth. And I remember one of the guys in this room, in the living room, go, as the birth is starting on the TV, goes, I think I'm going to pass out. And the wife looks at him and goes, no, you'll be fine. And I look over and he goes, timber, boom, and just passes out right there. And it was the funniest thing I've ever seen. So, I mean, and I love that class. I thought it was fun. We connected with those people. My wife, she's such a trooper. She actually had a 36-hour labor and ended up having to go to an emergency C-section to have my daughter born. She was born at 4:17 a.m. But we went to a birthing center and tried there for many, many hours. And then we ended up going to hospital in the night. And then my son, we ended up just doing a scheduled C-section to make sure that everything was safe. But yeah, it was, and I remember holding my daughter, and I always talked to my wife's belly when she was pregnant. I'd be like, hey, you know, I'm your daddy. I can't wait to meet you. And I played rock and roll on my wife's belly, you know. And so when my daughter was born, I remember just being there while they're cleaning her off. And I said, I'm your daddy. And ultimately, as soon as she heard my voice, she quit crying. It was the coolest thing ever. And I just remember like booger crying, knowing that this was my baby girl and she was fine and she was alive. And I'll tell you what, the ride home from the hospital though was probably the scariest day in my life.
Right.
I'd never driven with a baby before. You know, my wife's in the back with a car seat, and we're driving out of the hospital, and I'm coming up a road where there's a kind of a free right turn next to me. And as I'm going past that free right turn, a guy jumps the curb, almost hits my car. I have to swerve out of the way, and I'm like freaking out, like 10 and 2 the whole time anyways, right? And so as I'm going down, I finally, you know, that goes by, my heart's racing. About a mile down the road, I'm on this long stretch. This guy comes flying past me in a motorcycle, and I look in my rearview mirror, and he goes, and just wipes out and slides like 100 feet, the skin on the concrete. I'm like, holy crap, what is going on? Like, just get me home, man.
You're like, when did I enter a Michael Bay film? What is going on, dude?
It was the wildest ride home ever, dude. It was only like 3 miles.
Dude, and it's so funny because you think I've driven a million times. Yeah. Everything's good. It's like, why is that first drive? And when they like make sure that the car seat's all like strapped in, everything's good. It's like, wait, you're oh, you're letting me drive home with this?
Right.
Like, wait, hold up. You know?
Totally.
Dude, that's so awesome. So then let's talk about like, so now you obviously shared a little bit with like growing up with your dad and some of those experiences, man.
Yeah.
Like, how did those moments reflecting on that? Because, you know, right when the kid comes home, it's like, oh man, now you start reflecting like things that happened to you as a kid. Like, how did that play into it in the transition for you becoming a dad?
You know, for me, it was, I knew what not to do. And not that my dad was not a bad dad. He was an alcoholic, but he was very quiet and he was shy. And so I tried to reflect back and go, was my dad around when I was a kid? And I see that in pictures, but I don't remember a lot as a kid of those things. And I remember some of the memories in elementary school and stuff like that. But it made me really start to think, man, you know, and technology is different now where you can be distracted with phones and Facebook and social media and all that stuff. And so I really try to be very present with my kids. And I love to try to play games and sports with my kids. And both my kids are very active in sports. And so I love to just like be present with them and do experiences with them. But I think, yeah, I mean, it's a reflection of going, okay, I know what not to do. So I'm going to do the opposite and make sure that my kids know what love is and know what it means to have a dad around and have a mom around, that we just both love on them all the time. And we love on each other. Like my kids, you know, they see me and my wife give each other a kiss or a hug in the kitchen, and they'll come in and go, ooh, gross. You know, I'm like, hey, this is my hot wife. I'm going to kiss her, you know?
You darn right, man. You're like, hey, look, I chose her before you guys came along now.
Totally.
So. Oh man, there's so much that's going through my mind because, dude, I think about this. One, just parenting in itself, being a dad by itself is a full-time job. You have another full-time job. You're building 2 brands, dude. Like what kind of stuff does Erik do to like just release some of that? To really like recharge.
My recharge is the early morning hours, man. It's when everybody's asleep. It's kind of my alone time. I can get up. I spend some time in prayer. I get my coffee right off the bat, and then I get into the office and I really just kind of flip that switch. All right, I'm awake. I've said my prayers. I've done some kind of visualization. I've read some goals. And now it's time to get to work. And that's what really fires me up, is when I can sit down and really focus on building my brand, editing my websites, editing the shows, connecting with people online. Like, I love that. And then, of course, I always love going to live MMA fights. I was never a fighter, but I love being on this side of the cage. And so I love when those events come around every other month or so out in this area, where I can go, and I'm blessed to be able to cover the media for the event. And so I get to sit cage side and just really connect with the fighter. So that's what really kind of fires me up. And I love to go shooting too. So, you know, me and my buddies will go at the range, go shoot some stuff. So
see, that's so fun. And like when you start seeing it, especially let me slow down for a second here. Cause I was thinking about it. I was like, with MMA, and you had your daughter first, your daughter's 10 now. How much involvement do you bring like your kids into that world as well?
So they don't watch it. They know Top Rated MMA, and they think that Top Rated MMA is my full-time job, which is really cool. You know, and both of them said like, oh, when I get older, I want to do Top Rated MMA with you, Dad, which is awesome. And hopefully that will happen. That's the goal. That's my goal, is to be able to take that to a full-time level here in the next 3 to 5 years and make that happen. But they know of MMA. They know that it's fighting. They know that it's not most of the time personal things, but I never allow them to watch videos. Though they do, like, there's interest in, they've done some karate training. There's interest in putting them in jujitsu for self-defense and things like that. But they don't see it as like this crazy, violent, I hate you type sport. You know, they understand and they respect what I do when I talk with fighters, or they'll see a picture of a fighter or something like that. And so they are involved in that when I do. One thing I started this year was to do a fighter shout out of the day. I set this goal to do a fighter shout out every single day in 2019, a random fighter that either follows me on Instagram or I've come across on social media or something like that. And so I built this database of like close to 500 fighters throughout the year so far. And my kids love to click on the button that chooses the random winner. on the weekends when I schedule it. So they love that. Like, oh, Dad, do I get to pick the fighter this week? You know? And so they love being part of that.
Dude, the one thing I think is the best part, and you hit on it, is them excited for your journey.
Yeah.
Now you're mixing your family and your passion together, brother, and that's a win-win, right? And how important is it for you to allow or to drive and fire you towards those goals, knowing that your kids are watching?
So much, man. So I've always had this entrepreneurial spirit. I mean, ever since I was a kid, I was mowing lawns at 10 years old and had my own business at a very early age. And, but it's so important for me to be a full-time entrepreneur for my kids because I don't like missing events. And my full-time job this year was the first time that I was traveling. I missed 4 baseball games with my son this summer, and it killed me. And I know that he'll never remember, but for me, it crushed me. And I vowed at that point that I would never allow that to happen again. I would never allow an employer to make me work when I had, instead of being at my kid's event or sports event or anything like that. And so my fire to go full time and just be present with my kids for every event they have is like through the roof right now, right? I mean, I haven't hit the roof, right? But I'm so fired up to just take everything that I'm doing right now to 1,000 times X and just, make it happen. And so, to have my kids part of that journey is very special for me. So that's my wife too. My wife is my biggest supporter. She's the one that allows me to have these crazy ideas and lets me run with them,
Well, and you're executing on them too. So it's not just these wild ideas that it's like, oh, here goes Erik again. Let's see what happens.
Totally.
But right there, that just like reiterated the fact that you waking up at 4:30, whatever it is, you're like, let's go, baby. Let's get at it. Let's get at it. Like you said, you get your prayer in, you get your meditation or your opportunity to kind of manifest in your mind where you're wanting to go. Mm-hmm. And that's a lost thing. And I hope some of the dads listening to this can really understand the power of that, because when you start playing that in your head, you start envisioning the life that you want to have along with your other spiritual practices and personal development, things start becoming really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you're getting the opportunity with the Bearded Biz to talk to some like serious movers. What has been some of the takeaway from that you've implemented in like your family life?
It's been really cool to talk with a wide variety of people. And that's why I wanted to start the Bearded Biz. Was I wasn't going to be pigeonholed into any niche. Like, I just want to talk to people who are killing it, living their dreams, or fighting for their dreams and doing awesome things. And every time I talk with people, I get fired up because they're talking about goals, or they're talking about the hardship that they come from and then where they are today, and even talking with Ed Milet, I won his Max Out Challenge, blessed enough to be able to do that on Instagram when he ran that last year. And so I won this opportunity to talk with him for 30 minutes on Skype. And it was the life-changing call for me, where I got to sit there and talk with Ed, and he just got to speak life into me. And this is a guy I've been following for 2 years. I shot him a message 2 years ago, a year prior to him giving me that chance to win that Max Out Challenge. And I said, hey, I saw you have a house in Coeur d'Alene. If you're ever up here, I want to buy you a steak. That's all I said. And he didn't know who I was. And about 10 minutes later, he messaged me back. He said, heck yeah, let's do it, brother. And I was like, shut up. That guy just messaged me back. And I'm yet to buy a steak, but we talked about it on the Skype call. But, I learn a little bit from every single guest that gets on my show, because their experiences in life are so much different than mine. But they're super motivating to me. I just love hearing the guys that are out there kicking butt, man, and taking life and on their own terms, man. Especially those guys are just out there and they're killing it, and that just fires me up to want to do it more with my family.
Absolutely. And I'm sure, like, how does that then play into the way that you want to raise your kids? Like, because you hear all the time, oh, you tell your kids they can be anything they want. Well, we heard the same message, and then you get out into life, and life's a little different at times, right?
Yeah.
So what are some of the messages you tell your kids about pursuing their own dreams?
I do tell them that they can kind of pursue what they want, but I also say it takes a lot of work. We have a lot of conversation about, like, you can't just say, I want to be an astronaut, or you can't just say, I want to be a baseball player. You got to really work at it, and it's cool to hear my daughter talk about like, Dad, I want to run a lemonade stand next summer so that I can help buy us a house. Like that's her idea of like, she wants to help out. Like, and my kids, they have this entrepreneurial spirit. And my daughter, she wants to go out and she said, I want to be a world changer. I want to go worship and be a worship leader across the world. And I'm like, absolutely. You got to work hard. Let's make it happen. Whatever I can do to help them in their dreams. And I'm realistic with them. Like, hey, whatever you want to do, let's do it. But we got to practice. We got to work really, really hard to do that. But let's make it happen. Let's fight for it. And, and we talk about like things like, Les Brown, shoot for the moon, you'll fall to the stars, man, that type of stuff. And my kids, they love that motivational stuff. And they actually have entrepreneurial books that I bought them, and they actually do like them. So it's kind of cool to see them.
That is cool. That is cool, man. And it's so important. It's like, do you have any, like, what are some of your fears with being a dad? If you don't mind sharing.
No, I don't. I'm an open book for anything, man. And I think my fear is really failing them as a dad. I would, and my wife and I have talked about this. We know, coming from broken homes, that we vowed to stay together through anything. And throughout our 15 years of being married, we've had the ups and downs, but we've, and my kids know this, that like, no matter what, if they happen to hear us arguing or whatnot, like, we'll always come back together. We'll always, like, and I don't mean that like in, like I walked out or anything like that. It's like, my mom and dad will always have conversations that will bring us back, like, mentally and get us back into a good spot. You don't ever have to worry about the D word in our house. There's no divorce. That doesn't even come up. And so I think, for me, the fear is failing them as a dad, of missing those games, even though they may not feel that right now, but that might be something they might feel like when they're 17, 18 years ago. Man, Dad, maybe he did miss those games, So that's a fear for me. I think I put a lot of pressure on myself, where I'm like, all right, I'm 40 years old. I want to have this big house. I want to have property, and I don't want to have to rent a house for my whole life. And I think when my daughter says, I want to go sell lemonade so I can help us buy a house, like, to me, it's awesome, but it's also crushing, like, that she feels that she has to go do that,
Sure. And it's crazy, because you're like, was this even something that I ever said in front of my kids? Or like, how do they, because they pick up and they do everything, bro. And like,
yeah,
that's what's so interesting. We even believe that we can come in and like come home from work, open the door, smile, everything's great and all that. It's like, they just can still read through the nonsense, man. Like, if you're having a bad day and trying to mask it, I swear the kids can like feel it and read through it,
Oh, every time, because like I said, I work from home. And so my office is upstairs, and I walk downstairs when they're home, and I say, hey kids. And right off the bat, my son or my daughter, they'll say, how was your day? Or, oh, did you have a good day today? Or are you okay? And they'll sense it right off the bat. Yeah.
So what do you tell them when they ask that and you're not having a good day?
It's interesting. I really do try. I think 99% of my days are really good. Like, I feel like I'm on fire, but there are those days where I'm like, man, I wish that I was full-time Top Rated, or I wish that I was full-time Bearded.biz and being able to do a public speaking events as a living. And so I have to tell them, like, hey, today is just one of those days where I didn't get to do my passion today, but I got to work hard and I got to get money so that we can pay the bills, and so they understand that. And I say, well, we're very blessed that Dad gets to work, and we're very blessed that Dad gets to work from home. And so, it's just another day that we get through it, and God just gives us another day to refresh and restart tomorrow.
Absolutely, brother. I love that. What is a couple more things here I want to jam on with you. What do you think is one of the most valuable things that you could teach your kids?
I think valuable things is really just showing them love between my wife and myself. I think to show them that stability, that they don't ever have to worry about my wife and I getting a divorce, or I think just showing them that just to love on people. Like, they see us and we're like, we always try to compliment people, or if we're out at a restaurant, and we always just try to be nice and call people by their names. That's really big for my wife and I. If we're at a restaurant or a store, we always call the clerk or the waitress or waiter by their name that's on their name tag. And so my kids, they hear us and they see that. Why did you call him his name? Well, they have a name tag for us to call them their name. It's just not there for us to complain about. It's so we can call them by their name. And so like, we love having those conversations. So just instilling just to love on people.
Well, first and foremost, Eric, I mean, you can't go wrong with that, brother. It's like you're leading by the example of it. And I think that that's what's hard, is because we, again, going back to what I said before, we believe that it's just the words coming out of our mouth that helps groom or raise our kids to the individuals they become. But it's like, man, they watch so much more of the actions.
Yeah.
And, you know, they read that body language, what you and your wife are doing. So I think that that's awesome. What advice then would you have for a new dad, someone that's just getting ready to come into it, or a dad that's in your current situation that has 2 kids grinding towards their passion, and they're just maybe need that little nugget to keep going, man?
Yeah, I think for new dads, just be patient, and just there's going to be a lot of sleepless nights for sure. And there's even nights even now where I'm like, I still, wake up in the middle of the night and go check on my kids, because I love them so much that I'm like, all right, I need to go make sure that they're good. But especially as a new dad, like babies are tough, man. And so I think just like having that and being around that, you'll get through those days of non-sleep. You'll get through those days of fits of them like not wanting you to change their diaper and things like that. You'll get through that. And even dads now that have 2 kids, like, and fighting for their dream, man, I think just keep grinding, man. I think there's nothing in the world that can stop you from getting your dream except for you. And so if you can sit there and you can fight for your dream, whatever the hours is, if you're a night owl, do it at night. If you're in the early morning, like I am, do it in the morning, man. But just keep fighting for that, fighting for your passion, man. If you're in a job that sucks and it's paying the bills, well, maybe you have to stay there just so you can survive and put food on the table for right now. But man, get at it. Whatever you're trying to do it in the morning, do it at night, something like that. Just find time to get to your passion.
There it is, man. You got to find the time. You got to make it. Get up like Eric. Get up at 4:30 and start editing and praying and doing all the things you need to do before the kids get up. Because that's another lesson that I've been really like struggling with lately, is having the mornings where my kids come in and wake me up. I feel like you don't have a chance then to have your own time before you jump into that parent role.
Yep. Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
So
yeah,
you get to create that environment for yourself where you get to be, and then they walk in, you're like, I can transition smoothly now, right?
It is. Yeah. So I mean, when I get up at 4, especially on the weekends, I'm the most productive on Saturday mornings, because that Saturday morning I'm up at 4:00. I don't shower. I just get up straight to the office, grab my coffee, get in prayer, and hit the road running, man, right in the office. And my kids will sleep till 7:30, 8 o'clock. So there's 4 hours almost of me time focused on that. And when they roll in the door, man, it's flip the switch. Let's go downstairs. Let's make breakfast. Let's make it an awesome day. And so that morning time for me is so important for me, just because it's the me time.
Dude, and speaking, so you have your own time. Last thing, I'm really curious, because I'm trying to build this community where men aren't afraid anymore to chat with another guy and be like, bro, I don't know what I'm doing with parenting. What do you have any advice or insight for like other dads that feel like they can't reach out to other men and just say and talk about being a dad?
It's so important to do that. And I think I had this tough man mentality for the longest time, where I wouldn't open up. I wouldn't share my story. I was hesitant to join a men's group at church for the longest time, because men were supposed to be out throwing axes and killing things. And we can't open up. I mean, that makes us weak, but that's total falsification, man. And once I started to realize that I really thrive on a men's group and talking with people and going out to coffee with buddies and just me and that guy opening up on just life. I've got a buddy, Dave, who's been with me literally since first grade. Me and him are 34 years in the friendship right now. And we've had so many crazy, awesome stories. And so I think you just have to get past that mentality of it's a week for us to open it up, man. My kids have seen me cry. You know, I've cried in the men's group because of good things and bad things and things that we're going through. And it's such a weight off your shoulders if you can just open up to other men that you may think that they can't relate to, but man, I bet they do.
Absolutely. Absolutely, dude. I'm 100% there with you, you know, because it's like the more vulnerable that we are, especially with other men,
Yeah.
give them then the courage to open up.
Yep.
And to be part of the community. Because look, we're all going through our different things. We're all dealing with our stuff, you know, and like I said, parenting is not easy, man. There are moments where you feel like you're the dad of the year, you're flexing out. There's other moments you're like, I am messing this up like no one's business, right?
Yes. Oh, yeah. I've had plenty of those moments, man.
Yeah. Erik, dude, your insight has been awesome. Your stories are awesome. What you're building, you're crushing it, man. I see your stuff all over social.
Thank you.
If someone wants to start following you, like, what's the best way to reach out to you?
Yeah, so a couple different things. Facebook is Top Rated Mixed Martial Arts and Bearded.biz. And then Instagram, it's TopRatedMMA. And then just my name, it's Erik G. Allen. It's ErikGallen. And that's the same on Twitter. So TopRatedMMA and Erik G. Allen. Would love to connect with as many people as I can. I just love connecting with people. So feel free to follow me, message me, say hi. I'll say back. I respond to all the comments on everything that's posted on my pages. And yeah, that's the best way to follow me and stay up to date. We're also on YouTube. So we'd love to have you go subscribe to our channel and catch all the shows as I release them. Every Friday and every Saturday, I release new shows.
I love it. There it is, gentlemen. Tune in, check him out. It's been an awesome episode, brother. I appreciate your time. I really do.
Man, it was an honor, dude. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.